Dropdowns, sometimes called pick list or choice field. It's one of the many property types like text, number, date. HubSpot's data sync apps are best in class when it comes to field mapping, but getting a dropdown of HubSpot to sync with a dropdown in the other app, we've not been able to do that. Hey, I'm Frans, product manager for data sync, and I've been dealing with the same customer request over and over again for nearly 7 years now, from way back in the pricing days. Sync two drop-down fields with one another. It's been data sync's holy grail. For the longest time, 2017 in fact, we were able to sync from a drop-down field towards a text field. It's a limitation that's been forcing some of our users to do the craziest workarounds. Listen to this, they set up a field mapping, the contents of the drop-down field goes into a text field, automation, listening to whatever goes in the text field, and depending on the text, it will set a target drop-down field to the right property, and then in the other way, they have to do the same thing. It worked, but it's absolute madness. Today, I'm happy to report drop-down fields can finally be synced in a two-way field mapping. Is that an asterisk? Yeah. There's a couple of caveats, and I'll get to them in a second. How does it work? Well, let's walk through an example of syncing the HubSpot lifecycle stage property with an app like Pipedrive. The basic rule is this: dropdowns will sync when the underlying values of the dropdown field are the same or at least available the moment that you set up your sync. You create a custom dropdown field in your other app and you would call it something like HubSpot lifecycle stage. You'd add the corresponding readable values from HubSpot into this field. And then you create a two-way field mapping in data sync. Another example, syncing a custom option set field out of Dynamics, where you create a custom dropdown in HubSpot, and you can even do this on the fly, right from within field mapping. You add the corresponding readable values from Dynamics into this HubSpot property, and then you create a two-way field mapping. So the important thing to note is that it's the moment that you save your sync, that's when HubSpot keeps a memory of all possible dropdown values at that time on both sides. Those values and those values alone are the ones that HubSpot will keep in sync from that point onwards. So when a sync is running and you decide to create some new option values, you will need to go save your sync another time for those new values to also be registered and to start syncing. We'll get to improving that in a future version of dropdown mapping sync. The good thing to know is this also works for multi-select fields. And you even have the ability to sync a dropdown field two-way with a text field on the other, if you're syncing to an app where you don't have a thing like dropdowns, like Google Contacts. Typically what we'll support are those dropdown fields that you create yourself as custom fields in your app. Those are the fields that we immediately can fetch and translate all of the supported underlying values for. That's not always possible for many so-called out-of-the-box fields in CRMs. The good news is we may have ways to start supporting those fields too. It is our mission to unlock as many sync use cases as possible. Happy syncing.